Okay, here I am at the Atom text editor, and before we get started by walking through a virtual environment using Conda, what I wanted to point out is that Conda itself has really good documentation on creating virtual environments or managing environments, and it's linked to in the resource notes, but let me jump to that website real quick over here and show you what it looks like. Just go to conda.io/doc/using/envs for environments.html, or just Google search Conda environments, should take you to this page, or just use the resource link. But this has a lot more details than what we're going to be showing here. Shows you how to create an environment, change an environment, clone an environment, remove, etc. So if you ever have any questions further than what we discuss here, you have this documentation that will walk you through all of these steps. So what we're going to be doing is creating an environment. And there's an example here, conda create -- name. They're calling their environment snowflakes, and it uses BioPython. So let's actually create a virtual environment that will create a virtual environment for Django for us. So I will come back to Atom, click plus here to open up my terminal, and then what I will do is say this, conda create -- name, and let's call this my Django env, and then I will type Django because that's the package I want to initiate my Django env or environment with. I will hit enter, and what it's going to do is download that Django package if I don't have it already, and then apply it to that virtual environment. And Conda is actually pretty smart, and it will know that if you have already a similar version of Django somewhere installed on your computer, it may not need to copy it, it'll just reference it. That way you don't need to download anything, it'll just reference previous installations. I don't have Django on this computer yet, so what it will do is fetch that metadata, and let me expand this to show you what happens, and it will ask you, hey, these new packages are going to be installed, is that okay with you? And I will say no right now because I actually don't want Python 2.7, I want Python 3. So what I'm going to do is say no on proceed, and instead I will say this, conda create name, and let's say my Django env, and instead of starting it with Django, I'm going to start it with Python 3. And the reason I'm doing this is to show you an example of specifying a specific version of Python or a package. So it's a very similar process. You say conda create -- name, the name of your actual environment, and in this case, instead of a package, I will say Python, and then you say equals, and then you type in the version number you want. So for instance, I want Python 3.5. I'm going to hit enter. It will fetch that package metadata again. It will show me the new packages that will be installed. Here, I can see that I have the correct version of Python I want, 3.5. You can also do 3.6 depending on when you're actually viewing this course, if that's been added to Conda. But let's stick with something 3.4 or above. So 3.4, 3.5, 3.6, those should all work fine for what we're going to be doing. I'm going to proceed on that, select Y, and then I will jump forward in time for this to all be downloaded and installed. I'll see you there. Alright, so that has finished installing, and now we actually get the instructions. So to activate this environment, we can use activate, and then the name of the environment, and then to deactivate it, once we're done using it, we can say deactivate, and that will deactivate the environment. And if we ever want to use it again, we can easily just activate it with the activate command. And if you're on a Mac or Linux computer and you're using Bash, you'll probably have to use source, so keep that in mind. Alright, now that we've set up our actual environment, it's time to activate it. A quick note, in case you forget what environments you have on your computer, you can easily list them through this command, conda info --envs, and this will list out all the environments you have. Here I just have my default Anaconda, the root environment, and then this environment I created, my Django env. And depending on what Anaconda version you initially installed, this may say Anaconda 3 instead of Anaconda 2. But let's actually activate this environment. If you're on Linux or Mac OS and you're using Bash, you will probably have to say source, activate, and then the name of the environment, Django env. Since I'm on a Windows computer right now, I don't need to specify source. So let's bring that back down to just activate my Django env. I hit enter, and it will activate the environment. And the way I can tell that the environment is activated is you should see here in parentheses my Django env. And that means that everything I do right now in regards to Python is going to only take effect on this environment. Which means if I decide to install Django in this environment, it's only going to be installed that specific version of Django for this virtual environment. In fact, let's do that now. I will say conda install Django, hit enter, and this will install the latest version of Django. And for this course, basically any version of Django that's higher than 1.8 should work just fine. So 1.8, 1.9, or at the time of this course, 1.10 should be fine. Let's say proceed Y, but I do encourage you to at least use 1.10. That way everything we do in this course matches up exactly with what's on your computer. Okay, I'm going to hop forward in time for this to finish installing and downloading. Alright, so that finished installing Django to this virtual environment. And if I want to confirm if this virtual environment is actually working correctly, I can just type in Python into this command line, and I notice that the version of Python here matches the version of the environment. If I were to say quit, and then deactivate this environment, so if I just say deactivate, notice I'm no longer in the virtual environment, so if I say Python now, I am back to my original installation of Python, which happened to be this 2.7 version. So that's a nice little confirmation that you're in the virtual environment and you're actually doing effects on that environment. Let's say quit, and we're ready to go. Okay, so we did a lot of housekeeping stuff in this lecture, haven't actually dived into Django, but a lot of this stuff is really important and it's going to clear you of headaches later on if you don't learn how to actually use virtual environments correctly. So by this lecture, you should have a full understanding of virtual environments, at least how to create them, activate them, and deactivate them. You can always reference that link in the resources if you want more information about the environments, and you should have installed Django to your virtual environment. Coming up next, we're actually going to get started with using Django. Thanks everyone, and I'll see you in the next lecture.